In the middle of winter, when the garden is asleep and I'm just craving fresh greens, one thing I like to do is to grow microgreens. It's a really easy process that doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's also a really fast process. In just a short week or two, you can grow yourself a nice handful of nutritionally dense greens that you can then throw into salads or sandwiches or even cook them up. And it's also just a really good way to get those fingers back into some soil when they are just itching for the garden again. To grow microgreens, all you're going to need are some seeds and some soil. There are a lot of different kinds of seeds you can use. You can buy seeds that are specifically for growing microgreens. I have these alfalfa seeds that are actually marketed as sprouting seeds, but we don't really like sprouts as much, so I'm going to be growing microgreens with this. This is actually my first time trying the alfalfa microgreens instead of sprouts. I think generally a lot of the same seeds that are used for sprouting you can also try as microgreens. If you don't want to go out and buy seeds specifically for microgreens, you can also just use regular seeds that would come in a seed packet. I have these packets that I bought for a really low price that came with a huge quantity of seeds. I would never be able to grow this amount of seeds in the garden just as greens. So since I have so many extras, I can definitely use some of these as microgreen seeds to get kind of double use out of my seed packets. Another thing I like to do is to go through my normal seed collection and pick out any seeds that I didn't really like to grow for like the full grown vegetable. Maybe I've tried it out a couple of times and it didn't perform well for us, or we didn't like the taste, or if I just have extra seed packets. So I have this broccoli that doesn't form good heads for us, and I have new broccoli seeds that I'm going to be growing instead of these, so I can just use all of those extras for microgreens. I have this red mustard that we don't really like the flavor of. It's a little too spicy for us. And generally anything in this kind of like brassica family, like broccoli, cauliflower, and radish seeds, those would all be great for microgreens. And I also have a packet of purple kohlrabi. This is actually an extra packet because it was a free packet that we got in one of our seed orders. And I already have another packet of these, and I'm not going to need to grow that many kohlrabis. You can also save your own seed, so here I have some seeds from our sugar snap and snow peas, and when those pods get too developed and they're not good to eat anymore, I just let them fully develop on the plant, and that way I can save the seeds to grow for microgreens. Pea shoots are probably one of my favorite microgreens to grow because the flavor is so nice, and they're also very substantial in volume as well. Anytime you have a plant bolt in the garden, you can always just let those seeds develop and you'll end up with so many seeds for each of those plants that will be great to save for microgreens. So now I'm going to get started planting up these seeds. I have some soil that I'm pre-moistening, and you can buy special trays for growing microgreens, but I just like to reuse containers that we have. I have some milk cartons that I've cut just a few inches of, and then I also like to use these containers that mushrooms come in. These are just like nice size containers where I can grow a little bit of things, and I always like to just upcycle things when I can. I'm going to fill each of these with a couple of inches of potting soil. The great thing about microgreens is that they really don't require a lot of soil. You're going to be cutting off the entire plant basically right after they sprout. A lot of times they don't even form any of their true leaves, so they really don't need any kind of nutrients from the soil, and because of that you can really cram them in really tight, and they're not going to be needing a lot of root space or air space for their leaves to grow either. So you can see here I'm not even like filling the containers up to where they've been cut. Really just like an inch or two of soil should be good. I'm also not doing a huge quantity of microgreens here because I have multiple varieties here and I kind of just want to show the process and what they're going to look like at the end. But feel free to just get like a really big tray. Maybe you could use like an aluminum foil tray that you would use for cooking, and you can do a bigger quantity, because when you do go to harvest these, it is kind of like a small volume of greens that you end up with. So if you want to do more at one time, you can definitely feel free to use larger containers than I'm doing here. Once I have my soil in there, I can just place my seeds, and I am really liberally sprinkling the seeds on the surface of that soil. You almost want to like cover the entire surface of your soil with seeds. So I'm using up all of my pea seeds, and I soaked these for a little bit just because pea seeds are a little bit harder, so that can help to speed up the germination, but this isn't like 100% necessary. Here's what it looks like. I really could have put even more seed here for it to be more dense, but this was all that I had, so this is going to be just fine. And then next I'm going to move on to my alfalfa seeds, the ones that I bought for sprouting. And again, I'm going to liberally sprinkle that on top. I don't really like measure or anything, I kind of just eyeball it. And with the pea seeds, ideally you would like not want to be able to see the soil. For the alfalfa, you can go like a little bit less, but this is about how much I like the soil to be covered. Lastly, I have one other container, and for this one I'm actually going to be doing 3 different varieties. I'm just going to do them in little sections within my container, just because I don't have enough seeds to fill up this entire area. So I'm just going to do this in 3 separate sections. It wouldn't be the most economical to grow microgreens just from like normal seed packets like this, but again, these are seed packets that I either had extras of or I just was not going to grow that plant anymore, and instead of letting those seeds go to waste, at least we get to get one use out of them. And then this is a good way for me to kind of just like de-stash my seed collection as well, and to just go through, because I do have a lot of seeds and I can't grow everything, but it would be a shame to have those seeds go to waste. So I'm doing 1 stripe of my red mustard, and then I have a stripe of broccoli, and then the last section is for my purple kohlrabi. So here's what the soil surface looks like after I'm done sprinkling all of those seeds. And now I'm going to lightly cover a couple of these containers. I'm going to very lightly sprinkle soil over this one that has all of these mixed brassicas in there. For the alfalfa seeds, I'm not going to cover them just because they are so tiny. I don't think that they need it. So I'm just going to press them into the surface of the soil. And then for the pea seeds, I can cover them a little bit more because those seeds are so large. Besides the seeds that I'm showing you here today, some other things that you can grow from microgreens are any kind of like lettuce or leafy green. You can also try herbs like dill, basil, or even chives. Microgreens will generally taste just like how you would expect. They're just like little clones of what the adult plant would be. So pea microgreens taste a lot like peas, and radish and broccoli microgreens have a little bit of a spicy, peppery flavor to them. And that flavor is often really concentrated as well, so even though they are very tiny, they can really pack a punch. Another thing to know with microgreens is that when we go to harvest these, we're going to be cutting the entire plant right at the base, and it's not like a cut and come again crop. Once you take all of those leaves, the seed has no more energy and it's not going to come back. So if you want a constant supply of microgreens, you can do a batch of them maybe like every few days or so, and that way you will have a continuous supply always growing. Here is my finished collection of microgreen containers, and it really only took me a few minutes to get all of these planted up and sown. And from here, I'm just going to place them on a shelf right now. This is on my grow light shelf, but I'm not going to be turning on my lights just because these seeds don't need light yet until they have sprouted. And that will start to happen after a few days. So for me, I definitely started seeing a lot of sprouting action on day 3. This will depend a little bit on how warm your house is, but this will also depend on what kind of seeds you're sowing. Some seeds definitely grow and germinate at different rates from others. Here are the alfalfa sprouts, and you can see all of those little roots coming out of those seeds. Not really a lot of green yet, but they are definitely starting to grow. Here are my pea seeds, and it doesn't really look like there's anything happening on the surface, but if I look really closely, I can see that those peas are starting to come out of those seeds. And then there's a little bit of action on my brassicas container as well. I can start to see those little white tips coming out of their seeds. They still don't really need light right now, but I am making sure to mist them just to keep it a little moist in the containers. I don't want to overwater because my containers don't have drainage holes. You can have drainage holes if you like. I just find it easier to monitor by watering lightly, and then that way I don't have to worry about them dripping everywhere, but that's up to you. On day 5, there was a lot of greens, and at this point I had moved them to a sunny windowsill. You don't need like intense grow lights for microgreens, which is really great. You can just put them on a windowsill, and it's really okay if they get leggy because they're not like normal plants where you want them to be strong so that when you put them outside they're going to grow into a nice sturdy plant. For microgreens, it's actually kind of nice if they're leggy because the leggier they are, the longer those shoots are, they're easier for you to snip off when it's time to harvest them, and you also get a little bit more volume as well. So don't worry about them reaching for the light, just place them into a place that is relatively bright. Around day 6-ish, there's definitely a lot of growth on the alfalfa and especially the broccolis. The broccolis grow very quickly, and a lot of the peas are also sprouting now. So here we are on day 10. The peas are really just getting started right now. There are a few that are a little bit quicker and I can snip those off. But this is a good time for me to start harvesting those broccolis. You can see that they have not started growing their true leaves yet, but they all have their seed leaves that are a little bit more rounded. And you can wait a little longer to snip these off if you'd like to, but you can also snip them off right now. So I'm just taking some shears and we're going to be giving our microgreens a little bit of a haircut. I'm just trying my best to cut these greens as close to the base of the plant as possible so I can get as much of that stem as possible. And because these are not grown outside, they're also very clean as well, so you can give them a quick rinse, but sometimes they don't even need to be washed, which is really nice. You can just snip them and put them right into your meal. So here I have a little bowl of some of my microgreen clippings, and if you can see some of those stems, especially from the purple varieties, they are so pretty. They're like the most beautiful like lavender color from those red mustards and the purple kohlrabi. It's really neat. The peas took a little bit longer to be ready to harvest. I took like the first real harvest on day 13. And you can see how long these peas get, and they even start to like grow some of their tendrils. I really like pea microgreens for this reason because unlike the other ones where they're very like wimpy, these are kind of like real full-grown vegetables almost. And again, the flavor is really good. They have a really nice fresh pea flavor. And I really like these raw, but if you can grow a whole bunch of these, they're also really good stir-fried with some garlic. My favorite ways to use microgreens are to put them in sandwiches. You can also mix these up with some salad greens to bulk it up, and I also just like to top them onto any kind of dish, kind of like a garnish. So that's it, a really easy process for how to grow microgreens. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in the next one.